Welcome to the Osmo Early Bird Podcast. It's your old pal Emac coming to you with one Joey Corman as we get ready for a massive one-game Tuesday slate. Yes, the repercussions of a healthy, essentially three main slate day for Monday's holiday has turned into one game. But that's okay. We're going to talk about that, and then we're going to have some fun talking about different DFS strategies, some upcoming offerings that we have here at Osmo, etc., etc. But I want to announce a new sponsor. Sponsor of the Early Bird Podcast is now SuperDraft. That's at superdraft.io. You're definitely going to want to check them out. And let's have a little fun with this. So say hello to the future of daily fantasy sports. We have a multiplier game mode. Now, this is a lot of fun. There's new strategies and there's different ways to look at this. So how this works is there is no longer salary caps. They have each of the players with their own multiplier. So if you're someone like James Harden, you don't have a multiplier because you're good. So your fantasy points are 1.0. If you are someone like Kelly Oubre, you've got a 1.3 multiplier. And if you're someone coming up deep off the bench, say Nasser Little or some of those guys, you've got a 2 or a 2.5 multiplier. Now, those are just some extreme examples, but you build your lineup according to the roster requirements. They do have late swap, and you set it up, and it's all based upon the multiplier. Now, the best part, Osmo's got the projections for you, and we put the multiplier in there and do all of the math and heavy lifting. This is supported by Fantasy Cruncher. They do have late swap, as I mentioned, and mass multi-entry. They also have, or when I say mass multi-entry, tonight was one of their biggest NBA contests that they ran, and I think it was capped at like 56 entries. So it's their strategy is to run with a little bit of overlay to entice people to try them out. But if you have not yet made a deposit, go to superdraft.io, and if you put in $100 with your initial deposit and use the promo code OSMO, they will put $20 of SuperDraft cash into your account immediately, and that's what will be used into your first contests. Joey, have you dabbled over there? I played on tonight's basketball game.
I did as well. I played. First time playing on SuperDraft, and hey, I'm in the green, so I'm enjoying it.
I am looking right now live as we speak. Now I have a couple people going on the late game. We of course are recording this on Monday night. Oh, it does not look like I'm going to be cashing.
No.
Very, very sad. Well, I still have Damian Lillard. I've got D'Angelo Russell. They haven't tipped off yet. So here's a good example of the multiplier. So Harden, as I mentioned, he's 1.0. Russell is 1.4. Damian Lillard on my team, he's 1.25. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 1.0. Julius Randle, 1.4. Bam Adebayo is 1.3. And Nikola Jokic, 1.15. So that gives you a good example of how these things are broken out. And essentially what they try to do is give them multipliers that'll kind of get everybody to around the same target score, but it doesn't adjust necessarily for matchup, injuries, etc., etc. So that's where you want to find your little advantages. I'm looking right now, and it looks like our one of our boss men, Tom JK, is up there on the leaderboard.
He's up there, so but he's got no one left. So
no one left, and there are players coming for him. So we'll have to see. I am going to probably just fall short of the cash line, but I also played in a 50-50, and it looks like I might get there in the 50-50. So just throwing it out there, you'll get the usual formats. But again, they do have late swap, and they are supported by Fantasy Cruncher. So I just built my lineups by hand. I used the Osmo projections, sorted them with the multiplier, and then picked the guys I wanted to have some fun with. So just throwing it out there. But there's something we'll be doing some more content with and talking about more going forward. But again, they are the proud sponsor of the Early Bird Podcast. So get your $20 deposit bonus by depositing up to $100 or more with your initial deposit and using the promo code OSMO. If you don't use the promo code OSMO, you only get a $10 deposit bonus. So use the promo code OSMO.
Should also say, Emac, that the Super Draft projections are free today, and whenever we're running Super Draft promos, they will likely be free in the future. So that's a little bit more of an incentive to for those who aren't premium subscribers. Maybe give Super Draft a shot.
There you go. Not a bad way to do it. All right, so the one game we have is the only two teams that did not play on Monday. Gosh, I am being so cavalier. I haven't even pulled up that game, but I know off the top of my head it is the Los Angeles Clippers going against the Dallas Mavericks. This game is at 8:30. There will be a live before lock that will be going off at 7:45. You will get Fast Eddie Fear and Chris Randone, and they will be talking about the Clippers at Dallas. So the high notes we have: Paul George is going to be out with his hamstring injury. This will be his 6th or 7th game that he is missing. Kristaps Porzingis, while questionable, they think he's going to play. Now, he's been out for almost a month with his knee injury. He was all set to play in their last game, and they waved him off. He was a late scratch. So if you want to remember, he had that plasma-rich platelet-rich plasma, whatever it's called, the PRP injection in his, I believe it was his left knee, and they're just hoping he gets that recurring pain to subside, because of course they want to go into a long postseason run. So the really big question I guess we have is, will Kawhi Leonard focus on stopping Luka Doncic? And we should know that Luka Doncic scores 1.82 fantasy points per minute without Kristaps Porzingis on the floor, and it's 1.68 with Kristaps Porzingis on the floor. That's my high water marks.
I'd say that's a bit of a difference. I mean, at this point, the prices have pretty much adjusted to Luka playing without Kristaps, and you're not going to see a lot of minutes, obviously, he's been out now. He hasn't even played this year yet, so I wouldn't expect more than, if he plays, he'd probably see, 20 minutes from Kristaps? Maybe.
That would seem to be fair. I would say 20, upside of 25, but they're not going to push him. There's no point.
Yeah. But you're not rostering him. That's for sure.
Yeah. So we don't want to play him, and then we'll just kind of have to see for there. If he's out, we know what's going to happen. If he's in, Luka, I still like. The other guy, but you have the concern of is Kawhi going to really guard him, etc. On the other side, I'm okay with Montrezl Harrell. I'm okay with Lou Williams. I'm okay with Kawhi Leonard. I really like Pat Beverly, and he's someone that I've been. I'm happy when he's healthy. So let's see, is he in fact healthy? Because Mo Harkless has been dinged up. Yep. So Beverly's good.
You didn't say Mo Harkless?
Oh, that's right. You're the Mo Harkless hater here for good reason. But we've got Beverly has been very, very solid. He he flirts with those poor man triple doubles. He usually gets 5 or 6 rebounds, 4 or 5 assists, and 8 to 10 points. And you always think, oh, this could be the time he puts it all together, and then he doesn't. But he's someone I like, but it looks like he's reasonably priced as well on DK and FanDuel for the single contest. And this is kind of like what the Super Bowl's gonna be. No stone unturned on this one, with everybody having a full day to look at one game.
Yeah. No, there's going to be, you'll probably have some Terrence Mann action in this one. You're going to have Jerome Robinson, probably. Everybody. They're going to have every scenario covered, the blowout, everything. So Beverly, what's interesting about Beverly hasn't really, his numbers, his usage is identical with and without Paul George on the court, which is interesting. But he has been pretty hot lately. I do want to pull up the last 2 weeks or last week. And I do want to say this is now, I think we're on a record-breaking streak of being on this podcast in which Kawhi Leonard and Paul George have not played together. I think this is maybe the 5th or 6th straight podcast I've done where they have not played together.
It feels like it has been several.
It's been because I say it in every podcast. So this is, it's got to be 5 or 6 times, right? They barely even play together. They're not even going to know what to do in the playoffs once they're both healthy, if they're both healthy, right?
Yeah, so, actually, that's interesting. Let me go.
Yeah. So the last week without Paul George has seen a huge boost in value, even though his usage really hasn't gone up. So he has a 13.9 usage rate without George on the floor the last week, but his value is at 44.3 points in DraftKings and a per 36-minute basis. And for the season, it's at only 32 per 36. So he's really seen an uptick in that value. I don't know if that's a sustainable thing or what, or more of like a fluky, just hot for a week type of thing. I think there might be a lot of action on Beverly, and if I'm playing a showdown slate, he may be someone I will be looking to fade, depending on what his ownership percentage is.
So Leonard and George have played 461 minutes together. That's not exactly a lot. I'm just going to call it up here. Dallas, or most everybody's hitting about the 40 to 43 games played mark. So let's see where the Clippers are. Clippers have played 43. Tuesday night will be game 44. So yeah, these guys have hardly played at all together.
Mac, do you like the showdown slate? Do you like playing?
I go back and forth. I like it. I liked it last year for hockey, but they did not have the captains. I consider NASCAR to be showdown. I like NASCAR. You don't have the captain there. And then I've been playing tennis. We should talk. Yeah. We'll talk about that. But and when I say I mostly play on DraftKings. They don't have a captain there for tennis, so I like it when you're just putting the roster together. I'm okay with that. For football, I've come to like the multiplier. I like it better on DraftKings because it is 1.5 for your captain, but the salary also has a 50% tax or multiplier on it.
Yeah.
Unlike FanDuel, where I end up making too chalky of a lineup because I have a harder time calibrating and thinking what I really want to do with regards to where the ownership and popularity of the players are, because that's where you need to start leveraging things. So I don't know. I think we've hit the Dallas game enough. Let's talk a little bit about our offerings. We'll talk a little bit about some DFS strategy here, and then we'll get on out of here. It'll be a shorter podcast probably for everybody. But I want to point out that the Australian Open is going on right now. And we have projections, we have articles each day for the matchups, etc. And I think is everything in front of the paywall? I know the articles are.
No. Everything is free for tennis.
Okay, including projections.
Including projections. So
all right.
Blaine does projections.
I've been using the projections for all of 2 days now, but it's better than not having anything to look at.
It is. And I dabbled in tennis DFS for the first time this summer, and I actually enjoyed it. I mean, yeah, it is at that time because you only really have baseball, and when you're a degenerate like I am, I got to have something to do, right? So tennis is interesting because you have the odds there, and you know that the ownership percentages and people are going to play based on the money line odds, right? So what I figured out, like I noticed, is that anytime a lower owned player, so if they have the pricing and one player may be 7,000 and another player will be 8,000, if they're playing each other, if that 7,000 player was the favorite, obviously everyone would jump on that player. Because it's a $7,000 player, it's a favorite, then it's good value. They messed up somewhere, right? And I can't say how many times that player would like lose and get crushed. It's like it's just kind of like a contrarian type of strategy, and it worked out a lot actually. So that would be my primary advice when playing tennis DFS and fading that lower priced player that's a favorite. So
all right, so I'm looking here. There may be some days where we put the projections for free. The projections are behind the paywall, but we do have free articles. Several of them, and those are something that we've been offering. Caleb has been someone that has been doing a lot of our tennis articles, and he does a pretty good job. Cranks out a lot of content there, and that's something to look at. The projections I want to point out here because I had some fun reading about these, because I said, and to find this on the site, you go to the other sports tab. Across the top of the scroll bar on Osmo, you go to other sports and you hover over that, and it'll give you college football, tennis, and WNBA.
They're behind the paywall, you said? The projection? I'm not logged in. I have the projections here.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. I don't think we have any anything behind the paywall for tennis.
Then perhaps we are. I had logged out, but I may not have done it correctly. In any event, what I want to point out is, so these obviously take into account the money line odds, win probabilities. They break it down for projected aces, break points, double faults, which are a negative points that you can get there for tennis. You get different points for games won. You get clean sets, meaning if your players go 6-0, that you get bonus points for that. Sets won. When it's your serve, you get points for that. Of course, you get points for aces, etc. So there's all sorts of different scoring that goes into this, but this looks at all of it. And then the projections are generated from 1,000 simulations using baseline statistics for each player. Because tennis, with the way it works is there's the biggest variables you have is it indoor or outdoor, and then it's surface type. So is it normal surface? Is it grass like at Wimbledon? Is it clay like at some of the places, etc.? And then there are certain players that excel on those surfaces. Now, if you think of them playing on grass, it's like, well, it looks like a tennis surface, because obviously they don't play on like soccer field grass or baseball or football field grass, but it's actually grass, and these cause the balls to have different spins, etc. So it's entirely different skill set. So it's kind of interesting, but all of that is grouped into the projections, and I've heard them talk about the different data points and input, so it's quite involved. So to have those is very nice, because some of the other sites that have them, all they do is they just give you the average, which that's not very helpful, because there are different the different surfaces and the different types of environments to play in. So you'll want to check that out. It is kind of fun to dabble with. And the thing about Australia, depending on where you are in the US, it's between 8 and 12 hours ahead. Right. So you can have some late night or really early morning action.
I love making money when I'm sleeping.
Yes.
Hey, I always used to bet on Hawaii football games and basketball games, just because I like to make money when I was sleeping. Of course, there's times I lose money when I'm sleeping, which I don't like to do. But hey, then the prospect of making money when you're sleeping is just a really good prospect. I always love that. So yeah, Aussie Open, and obviously they're having some terrible brush fires there, which a lot of players playing for a great cause. So yeah, check out the tennis projections. I enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of game theory that goes into the tennis and figuring out who's going to be the high-owned players, and I liked it. It was something to look into. It is a little harder because you're not going to be able to watch them, and they're late at night and in Australia and that thing. Unless you're listening from Australia, thank you. But yeah, good to check out, and we'll be pumping out content on Twitter, and Caleb and Blaine are doing a great job there. So,
and that's always something to think about, because this kind of goes into the next little topic we have here is, DFS strategies. We're kind of at the end of football. You kind of want to look and say, hey, am I going to play? Am I going to take time off? Maybe you don't really care about basketball, or you don't really care about hockey, or golf's not your thing, and it's a month till NASCAR, and it's 3.5 months. Wait, I'm doing my math wrong. It's 2.5 months until baseball. So what are you going to do? Well, tennis is one option. You can give it a try. For me, I discovered NHL hockey, or should I say I rediscovered it. Now, I used to play a little bit of hockey for DFS back in the early days of DFS, when Thursday night used to not necessarily have much. There were no showdown slates for NFL. It was a 2-game basketball slate, and I started playing hockey because that was one of their busier days, and I liked it. I could play on Saturdays because I had less things going on, and then I could usually jump in on a Tuesday, and those are the 3 biggest hockey days. Well, I kind of got away from it once we got into Showdown and all these other sports, but I picked it up again during the NHL playoffs, because I was doing some stuff with Jay Kari. You guys know him from the baseball shows, and of course he heads up our hockey content. But I was talking to him about the different things that we were putting into our hockey projections, etc. And so I kind of got back into it. And I have not missed a slate since the NHL playoffs started last year. So, sometimes I forget to set my lineups. Like today, there was a 3 o'clock start. I thought it was 5 o'clock. So I ran a dummy lineup with a goalie that wasn't playing and a bunch of players that, even if they do play, they aren't correlated and it's not great. But that happens from time to time. But I've set up a way how I do it in Fantasy Cruncher. I found what works for me. I use Alex ranks each of our all the hockey lines. So for hockey, you have 3 forward lines, 2 defensive lines, and 2 power play units. So he ranks the 3 forward lines and the power play units and each individual player. So you can utilize that. You can set it up in Fantasy Cruncher. It's very similar to baseball. It involves stacking and correlation, and there's a lot of ways you can go. And I've just been having fun messing around with it, and it's actually been my most consistently profitable sport. I've got about a 15% ROI on that, which is kind of nice. I don't play a ton. I usually play about $50 a day in it, but it does add up. So I can definitely see it moving. So that's one thing you can do. How do I do that? Game selection. I don't play in the top heavy tournaments. I mostly play in the leagues. 100 to 200 person, generally 3 to 7 entry max. So that's where I mess around with those. But that's one thing I've discovered. So it's good. So I'm just checking out to see how does it work with tennis? What's going on? Do I like the strategy of it? Is it fun? So I'm messing around with that. Golf's another good one. I haven't gotten into single day golf. Have you been doing that?
I have not done. I've done very few single day golf. I usually hit up the Osmo projections that are Jen. I use Jason and Ben's material, Ben Ross and Jason Roslin, and use their material to do some daily golf and throw a couple lineups there. And I've never gotten huge into golf. I'm planning on trying to get more into it. I think summer golf contest is some of the strongest we have on the site. I think they do a phenomenal job.
Yeah, and they're very, very helpful.
It's strong, but our golf it's very sharp. I mean, really, really, really like intense, like mathematical models. Jason's models are something. So
so I usually come back around for the majors, and I'll play a little bit here. I focus more on NASCAR during that time, but I haven't really gotten into the single day. So I've been playing one lineup per day just to sort of see what's going on. But to do that, I don't want to just throw my money away. I like to read the articles, and some of them I help edit, etc. So that's why I'm looking at them. But I build a contest, and then I'll put it in a 50-50 or a single entry or whatever, and just kind of see what's going on, because I know the names of most of the golfers now. Like ones that I would have no reason to know, but I never remember, are they good on the Poa Annagras? Are they better on, this? Is it a links course? All that stuff. So I have just surface knowledge, but it's fun to look at our content. We usually have at least 1, if not 2 free golf articles per week. But then the neat thing is Jason holds court there on Sunday night or Saturday nights going into the final day on Sunday, when they do the single game contests in our Slack channel. My goodness, some of those prize pools are almost as big as the 2-day contests, and they're bigger than some of the short events, and they're definitely bigger than the full-scale European events, etc. So there's a lot of money out there in golf, and with the variance and it's a little ball that they're hitting, couple hundred yards with every whack. There's funny bounces that can happen, etc. And if you are paying attention and building your lineups appropriately, you can embrace that unpredictability and turn it into something that is actually in your favor.
Yeah, I think hitting on our content and using what we got, and obviously we're going to be proponents of our Osmo content, but I really think it's important that when consuming our content, to also incorporate your own process into it. If you think you're just going to go on here and just optimize some lineups and hope things work out, I'm not sure if that's really the right method to do. I mean, you could have success, but I think incorporating little types of adjustments you can make using the lineup. If you have access to Fantasy Cruncher, using the lineup run tool I love to use, and look for all right, what could I have done on this slate to make lineups that could have, won big GPPs, right? So little things a thing I love to do for NBA is, everyone runs their lineups. I love to put my max salary at $49,500. Like I feel like that just is going to differentiate my lineups from other people in the field. I like to set exposure ratings based on Osmo's boom bust probabilities. I like to make sure I don't have 4 players on one team in the NBA. So because if you think about it, a lot of times, especially when there's a lot of injuries, people stack up on these teams, and that's obviously a good strategy because there's going to be lower priced guys getting a lot of minutes. But I like to limit it to 3 because a lot of times you go with a 4-player stack, like one of those guys at least is going to bust. Like it's very, very, very difficult to pick 4 guys on one team who all go off. Do you agree with that, Emac?
Yeah, absolutely. I won't. I don't know that I. Well, so to be fair, like tonight was a great example. There was because there was a couple injuries on Portland with CJ McCollum being out with a sprained ankle, and then they traded Kent Bazemore and Anthony Tolliver away, and the trade hasn't fully been consummated. So Trevor Ariza and Caleb Swanigan and whomever else is coming, I forget the other guy coming back over, they're not ready to play. So all of a sudden, Portland has like all these guys that are getting minutes. The problem is they're not all good.
No, not good.
So I set rules, like I said tonight, between Gary Trent and Nasser Little and Simons and Mario Hezonja. I said I don't want more than 2 of those guys on my team, just because there's no way they can all do well. Fully well knowing that I would still be getting probably one of Lillard or Whiteside on most of my teams, if not Carmelo. So kind of by default, I kept it so I wouldn't get more than, the way the math works out, I wouldn't, even though I didn't cap it, I wouldn't get more than 4. That's a rare exception that I don't hold it down, just to make sure silliness like that doesn't happen, because it was a 5-game slate. But I think that with basketball is way different than, so hockey, there's 2 assists. There can be up to 2 assists on each goal. And with baseball, your guys can get an RBI, a run, et cetera. That's where you get the synergy. With basketball, there's a bucket on about 25 to 30% of the buckets. There's an assist. Okay, that's just one other player getting, 1.1 points or 1.5 points, depending on the site you're playing on. That's not very much. There's not a lot of synergy there for you guys. If there's a blocked shot, one of them is getting it. If there's a rebound, one of them is getting it. There's no points going to everybody else. So that's where you end up with players that sort of have a curbed upside. Now, sometimes players will just be too darn cheap for the minutes they're getting, and then it's okay. But you're into day 2, day 3, or game 2, game 3 of situations like this, and then it becomes like with Toronto when they lost, Gasol and I'm losing names, Norman Powell and
their lineup was an infirmary.
Yeah, so all of a sudden you're like, okay, we had 2 games of that where it was just like you could play anybody there, and they were just going to get points. But
I said, I'm sorry to cut you off. I mean, I do agree with that, but in terms of, for a cash game strategy, completely different. But if you're trying to do like your GPP and hit that big prize pool, which I think a lot of people who subscribe to our sites and play DFS in general are trying to do, that limiting, because if you just run the optimizer, you could very well, without any criteria or whatever, you could very well get 4 guys on one team, because Gary Trent's going to have a great projection, Anthony Simons is going to have a great projection, Damian Lillard, Hassan Whiteside, all going to have great projections. And like you said, they're not all going to go off. Like, it's almost impossible. Not impossible if it goes to overtime, things like that, but very unlikely that they're going to go off, especially when a lot of these guys are low per minute players. Simons especially, Trent. And that's another thing I do, and what I've noticed is high projected ownership players, using Awesome's ownership projections, who are low per minute players, usually bad move.
Yeah, and that's a good point as well. Like that, and you want to. The other thing is, if you're doing the mass multi-entry, you're able to, and it doesn't even have to be mass multi-entry. Like I did 20 teams on Yahoo tonight because they were adding $25,000 to the player pool. I'm getting crushed. I'm gonna be lucky to get about $40 of my 200 back. But I'm going back and looking at my teams, and because I did it in a hurry, I didn't do a good job of constructing my overall portfolio. I ended up with who was it? Damian Jones on half my teams. Okay, that's silly. Now, yeah, he went out with injury. I should have never had him on half my teams. But what I was doing was I was building my teams 3 or 4 at a time. Well, the problem is even though I had him set at like 25% or whatever, he kept coming in on each one of those sets that I did, and I made enough little sets and then picked my lineups. And all of a sudden, I'm like, shoot, I've got him on 7 of my 20 lineups. That wasn't my intent. I would have preferred him on 2. But because I built them in different waves, it allowed him to come in, and then I consolidated those things. So there's silly mistake I made, and normally I don't do it, but I was in a hurry, and I forgot about that. I forgot to set my NHL teams today. That there's a mess. So not only is it hard to win when you're doing silly things like that, you're now it's going to take me 3 or 4 days to make up for those errors. I mean, I'm not going to get mad or beat myself up over it because I don't, I'm only playing a couple $100 a day, so it's not like it's going to break me. But it's frustrating because my whole point is I like to be profitable each year. So I've been profitable every year but one, and I've been playing this since June of 2011. And the year I lost money, I had about $110,000 in play for the year, and I lost about $3,000. So it's like, you know what, that was not the worst case scenario, but it's still, I mean, explain to your wife, hey, I lost $3,000 playing fantasy sports this year. And then she's like, wow,
I don't have a wife, man.
yeah, well, my bigger is just like, you played $250,000, you played $300,000. It's like, no, it's like the same $3,000 over and over and over. She doesn't understand that. She's like, we don't have that kind of money. It's like, I know, but notice that I don't ever take money on the credit cards because I'm disciplined enough where I don't have to deposit, and I or redeposit. I haven't for years, but I usually don't take the money. I take the money out 2 or 3 times a year. And I have to sometimes I'll have to move money from Yahoo to DraftKings or DraftKings to Yahoo, whatever it is that I'm playing, but I don't have to redeposit it. But I'm a kind of a nit about it, is the term I've learned. Apparently this came over from poker, but it just means to be very regimented in what you're doing. So like the Millie Maker, I think I had between 7 and 10 entries in the Millie Maker this year for the NFL. 4 or 5 of them were tickets I won. That's it. I won't play it. I think it's the biggest top heavy tournament, and it's it's the Ricky Bobby of all tournaments. I don't want to do that. So I like to either win 30-40%, doubling my money is like great. I do that once or twice a week, tripling probably every 2 weeks, and then you get a 5x once a month, or you get I'll have, I think last year I had 4 or 5 different days where I netted more than $1,000 because I just nailed everything. But those are going to be fewer and farther between for me. But again, I don't have to. I mean, a bad week for me is losing $200 or $300 for the whole week. So it's like,
that's tame. That's pretty tame. Yeah. But there's an easy solution for this whole telling your wife you lost that money. I mean, you just got to max the Millie Maker with her. I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, that's so I made her an account. This was a site that's been defunct for 5 years now. So I had a buddy who was over, and I was trying to get him to play DFS, and he didn't want to do it. I'm like, well, we'll just use my wife's credit card. We'll set up an account. I'll put $50 in there, and because he was coming over drinking beers or whatever, we're like, well, let's watch some college football. Let's play. This is a site called Daily Joust. So he did that, and we lost the money, and that was that. And he never really got into playing until like 2 years later, and then he saw the DraftKings ads. So he created his own account. He was like, oh yeah, this is awesome, and he won like $6,000 or $7,000, and then he proceeded to give back $6,000 or $7,000 every year for the next 3 years, till his wife was like, not, you don't get to do that anymore. That was as close to multi-accounting as we ever got. One night drinking beer on my in my living room, trying to make a late night
college football teams. This is before projections even existed for college football.
Before projections, this is like that's the gen life, Emac.
Yeah, we may as well have faxed in our lineups.
Faxed in our lineups.
Yeah. So that was my excitement. But no, for me it's the puzzle. It's doing this every day, and it's just being regimented. And Josh says it good. He just says, you know what? I like to know that I can win against a game that's entirely dead set against me being profitable.
There's a lot of satisfaction in that. It's not just about the money. It really isn't. Like for me, like I mean, I do match multi-entry and I use also projections, but I do like the process of using my own projections and building like my own lineups, and the satisfaction when you do hit a big pot and you beat a lot of other people who had a lot more resources, and you had 3 lineups in there and you won. And that's like, I mean, yeah, it's luck. I mean, that's lucky, but it's also like, hey, like it's possible. It can happen, you know? And I think that's what a lot of people in DFS, I mean, I talk to a lot of people who are just, I don't follow the sport. I'm just going to match multi-enter. I'm just going to use, optimizer and do this, do that. And then there are people who are like, I despise match multi-enter. And they're like, I want to hand build my lineups. I don't care about like being at 150 lineups. I want to hand build them. I mean, and like feel good about like when I do well and put the time in. The process is a lot of it, right? People love fantasy football, not just because of the results, but because of like the whole event of fantasy football, fantasy baseball, like the whole event of like being part of the league and making your own decisions and being in charge of something. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's that, and it's the almost instantaneously, were you right or wrong? How did you analyze all of the different variables and inputs and trends and situations and, fill in the blank, and were you right or were you not? I mean, it's my day job. My entire career has been finance or compensation related or whatever it is. So I've just been living and breathing in numbers. Well, for me to find out if I'm doing a good job could take years. Did I impact positively or negatively the turnover rate for my company? I don't know. I may not be at the company long enough for, if I'm only there 2 or 3 years, we may not know for sure. We can kind of guess at it. Well, here I know if I was right or if it didn't go my way or if I was just being foolish. And today was a day for me being foolish, as I've pointed out mechanically. I screwed up a couple things.
I was foolish too. I've had bad lineups today.
Yeah.
Not good lineups. I mean, foolish and not like, in terms of me, being foolish is like poor money management. Like just putting too much onto like, putting too much stake onto, placing too big of a bet. I mean, that's where I think most people, and I don't think there's enough of out there regarding money management. And just like how what percentage of success in daily fantasy do you think is the money management aspect of it?
For anything long-term, I would say that's the vast majority of it now. I mean, so if you have a big win, your best bet is to stop playing daily fantasy sports. Your best bet is not to increase your buy-ins. It's not to move up in stakes. It's not to enter more contests. It's to get up from, the proverbial get up from the table and walk away and just say, okay, I won. Okay.
That's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to do, Mike.
Then, and if you can't do that, then you need to go down the decision tree. So is this entertainment? Okay. Yeah, it's entertainment. All right. So if you lose money, that's okay. I mean, you lose money, air quotes, you lose money every time you go to the movie theater, every time you go play golf, every time you go fishing or hunting, every time you go buy a new shirt, every time you go out to eat, you actually get something kind of for it. But anything else that you're spending money on that's not tangible is essentially bucketing most of it into entertainment. All right. So then why do we get so mad when we lose money here? What was your rate of return the last time you bought a book? 0. Okay. Or downloaded a book, I guess,
But now we're getting to economics, like the whole, like, I don't know, what do they call that? Like the, I don't know where we're going. With economics, like the value of like, I don't know.
Oh, it's the time. Well, that's the time value of money is one aspect. Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, hey, I've been playing
an
a while.
Opportunity cost, yeah.
I enjoy it, and I enjoy working in the industry, like more so than anything. Right. So
yeah, I mean, before this, I was doing, I was like, one year I did crossword puzzles because I wanted to see if I could ever get good enough to do the New York Times crossword puzzle, at least get half of it done. Spoiler alert, I wasn't.
you weren't able to do that?
I got to the point where I could finish like 90% of the, I was in Seattle, so it was the Seattle Times. I could finish 90% of that most days, but yeah, I mean, it was good. Another time in my adult life, I took piano lessons for like 4 years because I wanted to see if I could be any good at it. It was this was basically before the internet. So what is that? Is that different? My wife paints. She crochets. She does variety, runs half marathons, etc. Those are her hobbies. Mine just happens to be daily fantasy sports. So I think as we kind of wrap it up here, it's just a reminder of everybody. Just have fun doing this. The days of people doing this full time, they're fewer and farther between, the people that can actually do it. And to your point, it's because they're incredibly disciplined with how they do it. And we've seen a few people in the last couple weeks say that they're basically giving it up because they don't think it's worth their time anymore.
It's fair. I mean, yeah, I think evaluating your reasons for doing anything, not only daily fan, for doing, like you said, doing anything is really the big important. We're getting to life lessons now, Emic.
But it's always fun. We don't get to do too many podcasts like this because it's very rare that we have one game to talk about.
Yeah, people just want the picks. They want to talk about the slate, and I mean, no one should be taking life advice from me, but here we are. So, yeah. Well, I think it's time to wrap this one up. So, yeah, stay tuned for Randone and Eddie are going to be on the live before lock.
7:45. It'll be there.
All right. That's a rare one. A rare one game live before lock. It should be interesting to see what they talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Somehow they'll spin it into a 2-hour show, but
will they?
Tune in to find out. But with that, gamers, we just want to say good luck.